Hello everyone, let us talk about the business cycles. A business cycle denotes the endless periods of expansion and contraction of the economic activity. It shows the fluctuations, the ups and downs of the economic activity. Now, let us look at the phases of the business cycle. We have the recession, depression. So recession and depression together they form the downswing or the contraction. Then we have the recovery and the prosperity. Prosperity and recovery together they make up the upswing, also known as the expansion phase. The turning point at the top of the cycle is the peak. This is the highest point. And the bottom or the lowest turning point is the trough. Then we have a distance between the trough and trough, which is known as the wavelength, and the distance from peak to trough, that is the amplitude. Downswing is also known as the contraction. Upswing is also known as the expansion. So let us look at what happens at each phase. The first one we are going to talk about is the recovery phase. What happens in the recovery phase? There is a slow increase in the demand and production. Unemployment decreases as more jobs are created. Remember, we are recovering. So there is a bit of new jobs being created. There is an increase in investment by the firms. The economic activity increases and the country enters into prosperity phase. This is when the currency also appreciates due to the increase in exports. Then inflation declines. Now let us look at the prosperity phase. In this phase, there is a high increase in the economic activity. There is also an increase in the aggregate demand because people are working, they are earning, and they spend. There is also an increase in the employment rate. The standard of living improves. The level of income also increases, and a great degree of optimism. The businesses become optimistic. There is inflation due to high amount of money in the circulation. When there is more money in circulation, inflation happens. Interest rates increase due to high demand for loans. If the businesses are doing well, they tend to borrow money with an intention of expanding. Others, they borrow money with an intention of starting a new business. So this causes a deficit on the balance of payment. Due to the high demand of goods and services, investment increases. There is more buildings that are bought or rented as the businesses open new branches. The businesses buy more machinery so as to produce more goods. Now, the fact that there are more goods that are being produced, it leads to high stock, high inventories. Once the cycles reach the peak, the prosperity phase ends. Now let us talk about the peak. The peak refers to the turning point at the end of the prosperity phase. The upswing has reached its end, meaning there is no more room for economic growth. The economic factors such as employment, production, and profit, they are very high. Businesses are in competition to outshine each other. Factors of production are in high usage. After the peak, we enter into the recession. Now, let us talk about the trough. The trough refers to the turning point at the end of a downswing. The employment rate, income levels, investment spending, the savings by consumers, and consumption spending are very low. Soon after the peak, we go to recession, as I said before. Now, what is happening in the recession? The economic growth slows down, workers are laid off, and unemployment rises. Because businesses are not doing well, they tend to lay off some workers. That's why we say unemployment rises. Businesses become pessimistic. The consumer level of income declines. Therefore, the consumption also decreases and aggregate demand decreases. Whenever people lose their jobs, those people are not able to buy goods as they used to. That is why we are saying their consumption decreases and the aggregate demand also decreases. So the decrease in the demand causes the production to decrease. So does the real GDP. Investment declines and the businesses cut down the amount they spend on capital goods. The currency depreciates, inflation and interest rates rises. There is also an increase in the interest rates. The increase in the interest rates leads to a decrease in the demand for loans. Remember, when the interest rate is high, businesses are demotivated. They are not willing to borrow money because of high interest rates. That is why we are saying the demand for loans decreases. Now let us talk about the depression phase. Depression occurs if the recession happens for a long time. In this phase, there is a decrease in spending because money is in short supply. Investment spending is very low. There is low production of goods and services that leads to further job losses. If there is low production, that means there is need for few workers. We only hire more workers if the production is high. There is a severe goods and services shortages. The production costs decline due to competition for employment. You know what happens if there are so many people who are not working. People become desperate and start accepting low wages and salaries. That is why we say the production costs declines due to competitions for employment. It becomes cheaper to produce goods and services due to the lower production costs as a result of cheap labor. So it encourages an increase in the inventory or stock and also foreign trade. It is very rare, however, to reach depression phase because usually the government put measures to avoid it. When they see that they are in a recession, they try to put some measures so that they avoid depression. Trough is reached when the economic activity reaches its lowest point. The trough refers to the turning point at the end of the downswing. The employment rate, the income levels, investment spending, savings by consumers, and consumption spending is very low. This marks the end of the lesson.